This is the artificial kind of photography. This is edited. The angle, look at that. Kerry looks taller than Johnson, and Johnson looks taller than, well, Johnson looks almost as tall as Biden, while Jill Biden looks the shortest. Now, that is the intention, that is the evidence of the intention to make false image, falsification of the images. And there is a supposed joke about the marriages by Biden and Johnson. And this is absolutely pathetic display because the G7 so-called summit is supposed to be about the big issues of the world. But the Daily Mail, idiocy and racism, and trying to give Boris Johnson a kind of simulated status, as if he were Churchill and he were dealing with the big issues affecting the future of the UK. And all of this rubbish, I mean, what difference does it make if the cost of this £200 a night castle is being used for Joe Biden? And then there is the pathetic stupidity of the Daily Mail continues. And there is this absolute racist moron, Richard Littlejohn. And then it goes on pages 16 and 17 with the backlash of the Oxford University against this so-called rebellion against Cecil Rhodes and the removal of Brando's picture. And Dominic Sandbrook, one of the racists who writes regular column in the Daily Mail, he has got a piece about pompous posturing narcissism and its blackmail. And the whole of the main pages of today's Daily Mail, the whole of it, is given to the falsification of the real purpose of the G7, and then the racist resurgence of racist justification by the institutions is evident in the Oxford University. The college at Oxford University refusing to remove the statue of Cecil Rhodes, and the continuation of the racist denial of the role that Brando has played in colonialist institutions and discrimination. And the Daily Star is doing the jokey kind of coverage about the lying Matt Hancrook, saying that the world is stunned by, as politicians says, he hasn't told fibs. Well, they are not telling the truth either, they're fibbing. Fib is not in any way substantial as a lie, as a wanton lie, as part of the lying agenda and the corruption and robbery of the society and public resources. And they're having a headline on the G7 because the headline is Biden on warpath. They're saying there have been some deft and flimsy reasons to go to war over the years. El Salvador and Honduras once fought for 4 days over the result of the 1970 World Cup qualifying match. And this is an editorial idiocy that is comparing Joe Biden's anti-Brexit position about Northern Ireland with a fake concern. And the actual evidence contradicts and exposes the Daily Scar as a stupid paper, because this is what the Guardian is saying about the Brexit impact. It's a bitter standoff over Brexit, sour start of G7. And it says that nothing is negotiable over Northern Ireland protocol, warns Macron. And this is a piece by three of them, Heather Stewart, Kim Wishart, and Peter Walker. The French President Emmanuel Macron last night increased pressure on Boris Johnson over the Northern Ireland Protocol by insisting nothing is negotiable at the G7 summit of world leaders risked being overshadowed by a bitter Brexit standoff. So there is a standoff which is being denied by the Daily Scar, saying that Joe Biden's insistence that the UK honors the Good Friday Agreement and does not undermine it under any pretext or excuse. Now we move on to page 3 of The Guardian, where there is racist housing policies at the Barbican. The Barbican is a city of London, that is the small city of London. And it says the Barbican has been described as institutionally racist by its own staff, who have compiled dozens of alleged incidents that they say show the cultural organization has failed to live up to anti-racism commitments it made a year ago. Current and former staff have shared stories anonymously and collated them in a book that contains more than 100 instances of alleged prejudicial behavior, including senior staff openly using racist language and a wider culture in which racist incidents are not investigated and career progress is curtailed for staff of, within quote, we use the word quote, within quote, color. Some incidents date back to 2014, though others are said to have happened in the past 12 months. The Barbican said it had launched an independent review into the allegations as presented to it by The Guardian. In a statement, it said, the Barbican, that is, said to The Guardian, "We fully recognize the pain and hurt caused by these experiences. We are committed to pursuing the ongoing program of action which we have laid out to advance anti-racism in the organization and to achieve necessary change." The Barbican said it was shocked and saddened to hear the allegations. Now, these people, when they issue statements like shocked and saddened, they obviously are lying, because if they are and they have been placed at any position, senior positions at the institution, organization like the Barbican, doing the crime of racism, then they must have been aware of what is going on, what was the norm, what was the routine, what was the normalized culture of behavior and attitude of discrimination against Asian and African people, African and Asian people. People of color, as the Guardian says, is a completely stupid word. And it is saying the whole page is given to the Barbican racism. The book contains emails from the task force that claim they were given no powers to effect change, were asked to do the work alongside their normal jobs, and, in the words of one contributor, expected to solve racism at the Barbican in 2 months. In an update to its anti-racism pledge last month, Barbican set out the key actions it had taken to date, including establishing a formal subcommittee whose role is to help push forward anti-racism action and hold the organization to account. It also appointed staff to identify the next steps that could be taken to remove process and barriers in the organization that sustained systemic racism. In the update, it also said it was using response from the listen and learn sessions to feed into a new equality and inclusion strategy. It also said it was recruiting for a new equality and inclusion role. Now, this is not the only organization in Britain that is uncovered, exposed as a racist one. Why? Because every institution, every organization in Britain is racist. And all the included, if you like, outlets, organizations, constituent bodies, affiliates drawn from the ethnicity linked, ethnic faith linked, if you like, organizations are themselves colluding with the racists and anti-Muslims, and in the case of the Sikh people, anti-Sikh people in this country. So this report by the Guardian, of course, is a tip of the iceberg. And the history, the record of the kind of institutional inquiries, diversity inquiries, and all the rest of it will not lead to racism being ended and nobody being held to account for racist behavior. Now, contrary to the piece about the Barbican, or as different from the piece about the Barbican that the Guardian is running today, there is no similar inquiries into the corruption, big corruption and big racism that are at work in the local councils. But the sheer numbers of people involved and affected, every single council is a racist council. Every single local council, that is a racist council, and the current context is an anti-Muslim one as well. The Guardian has got a stupid picture on pages 6 and 7, next to the piece continuing from page 1, bitter standoff over Brexit sours opening of the G7 summit. This is not a picture that is consistent with the statement that Joe Biden has made many times, that Johnson is undermining the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland. And there is a piece on pages 18 and 19 of The Guardian. Well, page, let's say 19, which has got the heading, Tory MP accuses Ofsted. Notice the party, Tory MP, accuses Ofsted of massive failure over extent of sexual abuse in schools. And there is a piece about the cost of the NHS. When they say poor nations, what they mean is the nations and regions in Africa and Asia that have been looted and robbed by imperialism. And the looting and the robbery are continuing decades later. That is not what The Guardian says. The Guardian peddles the lying line of the Johnson administration, for example. And there is a piece on page 16 of The Guardian which says the tackling NHS waiting lists may cost the NHS 40 billion. Downing Street has been warned. Now, whereas the sexual harassment is admitted on this page 19 in relation to Maria Miller, who is the one that has accused Ofsted of massive failure over extent of sexual abuse in schools. The court report is headed Court Orders Review of Crown Prosecution Service Decision not to prosecute over boy's death in River. Now, the boy's mother is saying that a decision not to charge over the death of her son, Christopher Capisa, was because of race. Now, Michael Mansfield surfaces this piece now. Is he the one that represented the boy's mother? Yes, it is. And he says, no reasonable prosecutor could, on the facts of this case, decide it was in the public interest not to prosecute. He added it is past the evidential threshold because the allegation here is unlawful act manslaughter. Mansfield said that according to reports, at least 16 people were present when the incident took place, and that initial accounts that it was an accident appear unreliable. At least 4 of them, the witnesses, decided either together or apart that they weren't going to reveal who did what, let alone what happened. To begin with, it's he jumps off the bridge, then it becomes he slipped into the river, into the water. Mansfield claimed these initial accounts unduly influenced the police investigation. The initial investigation operated entirely on the basis that it was an accident and that Alina Joseph shouldn't worry about it. That predicted the whole approach to this case, that it was tragic but an accident. Mansfield speculated that the parents of the young people involved then put moral pressure on their children to tell the truth. And that's when it became clear he, Kapisa, was deliberately pushed into the water. Mansfield also said that the teenage suspects had still not accepted the truth of what happened. He said questions were raised by his statement to the police. Mansfield said, if this was as the suspect claims, he ran into Christopher and almost accidentally pushed him in the water. If that's true, then he might have been expected to help rescue, but we don't see him attempting to retrieve Christopher from the river, and we don't see any sign of him volunteering himself to the police. We don't see him apologizing. We don't see him regretting. We don't see any remorse. Nothing. Now that is the main suspect. Mansfield said not prosecuting the suspect sent an abhorrent message to the community. What message is left with the community? That it's all right to lie. It's all right not to disclose. Just hang on in there and they won't do anything because of your age. Without a prosecution, the rule of law and also the system of justice falls into disrepute. Now, of course, there is no rule of law and there is no system of justice to begin with. Now, this is the okay. So let's see what this CPS lawyer saying to the High Court. There was a careful consideration of the evidence in the case and of the public interest factors, which the prosecutor identified during the course of her review. Now, who is Duncan Penny? Duncan Penny takes our narrative to Tower Hamlets because it is Penny who appeared before the election commissioner, Richard Morey, on behalf of Luther Roman in 2015. And we should talk more about Penny in the context of Luther Roman and the corrupt post of corrupt mayor in Tower Hamlets later. Now, Penny is saying that the black boy's murder by being pushed into water should not have been prosecuted. Why? Because the prosecutor, the Crown Prosecution Service, took into account all important factors left there. Well, there is no evidence that there was any importance given to the murder of this boy. And quite apart from Duncan Penny, who acted for Luther Roman in 2015, there is the Crown Prosecution Service. What is the Crown Prosecution Service relationship with the corrupt role of the Tower Hamlets Council, corrupt mayor, and the corrupt role played by Duncan Penny? Because Duncan Penny is a licensed law trader. And the licensed law trader looked for any excuse, any pretext to dismiss the concerns of the petitioners who filed the petition against Lutfur Rahman's election, so-called, in June 2014. And when in 2015, Duncan Penny was recruited and hired to represent Lutfur Rahman's defense against the petition against him, Duncan Penny repeatedly represented the lying position of Lutfur Rahman. There was nothing to stop Duncan Penny appearing to represent the lying position. And here, Duncan Penny is doing the same thing, or did the same thing, or has done the same thing in denying liability and duty and responsibility on the part of the Crown Prosecution Service over the decision not to prosecute the murderers and killers of this child, Christopher Kapisa. Now, the Crown Prosecution Service itself is contaminated with the history of racist refusal to treat racist murders or racist crimes as racist and as crimes worthy of prosecution. And the licensed law trader, Duncan Penny, of course, took as correct, as morally, legally, ethically correct, the track record of the Crown Prosecution Service, the racist track record. And Penny didn't notice, or he didn't point out anything was wrong with the racist status quo of the Crown Prosecution Service. How was the licensed law trader like Duncan Penny considered in any way an agent, representative of telling the truth when Lutfur Rahman was his client? I mean, there is nothing in the system that checks, that queries the fitness of someone like Duncan Penny, the licensed law trader, to be allowed to weave a series of lies about a racist denial and refusal to treat with the utmost urgency the evidence of the murder of this black boy. Duncan Penny, of course, would not have any moral kind of angst or any anxiety or any distress or any concern or interest in finding out why the CPS refused to prosecute the murder of this black boy. And there is nothing that such failures by the CPS. Now we move to India, and here is a rare, very rare piece about India by The Guardian. Remember, The Guardian is and has been the main British kind of print media propaganda platform for all the wrong things that the successive Indian regimes have done over the last 8 decades. And this is the first time that the Guardian, but it is only on page 23 inside the Guardian, that it is even admitting that. And it says India, daily deaths reach global record after state revises data. So that is admission of the fact that the originally published data was wrong, was a pack of lies. And this is a piece by Peter Beaumont. Doesn't say whether he's based in Delhi or is based in the UK, and it says, a woman and child having their temperatures checked at Mumbai railway station. Photographed by Punit Paranipi, AFP and Getty, and that is the piece. 6,148 people died in India of COVID-19 yesterday. And 4,000 people were added by the state of Bihar. That's the state they're referring to. 359,676 of the number of official deaths, or official number of deaths. But many experts believe it exceeds 1 million, which would be the world's highest. Now, absolutely easily, the number of people murdered by Modi's unleashing of the surge would exceed 1 million. And the Guardian piece in the journal by somebody called Mark Blythe, described as professor of international economics at Brown University, Rhode Island. And the heading is, the G7 helped create a low-tax world. Will they really change it? Now, that is a completely contradictory statement in that headline. Of course they won't. There's a piece about the role of the Labour Party. And there is an editorial in The Guardian about the meaning of England, from Nancy Mitford to Gareth Southgate. So there is a piece on page 5 of the journal about the Guardian Library. So we refer back to the Kitten's House in Brick Lane in the context of library and archives and related resources. And as part of the updating of the evidence of the criminality by the Tower Hamlets crooks, Tower Hamlets Crooked Council, that colluded with the attacks on the Kitten's House. So we shall refer back to the Kitten's House and the attack on the archives and resources by the Tower Hamlets Council crooks in collusion with the criminals of the Spitalfield Small Business Association and the criminals situated elsewhere in the community, including the crooks in the Tower Hamlets community housing and the criminal in particular, Mike Tyrrell, the crook, and the criminals in Tower Hamlets Council, including the crook Steve Hill and the crook Colin Cormack, and other crooks in the legal so-called department, in place between the years 1996 and now, whether all of them have left or some of them have left the positions. Now the Times in the leading articles, page 29, has got the first leading article about the G7 summit, which is described in the subheading. The main heading is Standing Together, and the subheading is the G7 summit in Cornwall is an opportunity for leaders of the world's biggest democracies to provide global leadership in tackling the most urgent challenges. Now, how does leadership work? It doesn't say how the concept of leadership works. And where is accountability, morality, ethics, and care for others? Now, there is an odd item in this, page 31 of the Times. That a woman in America stole $835,000 to fund gambling habit. An elderly former nun will plead guilty to stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from a Catholic school in California to feed her gambling habit, US prosecutors said. Now multiply that by 1,000, the factor of 1,000 of others in posts such as the churches have been doing the same thing. in Gaddafi's son, who is being qualified by reference to British education. What is that supposed to mean? This is not education. This is brainwashing that they're referring to. So the Financial Times has got it just about correct in the sense of the height and the stature. They show the Jill Biden and Joe Biden on the left of the picture and Boris Johnson and Carrie Simmons on the right. And the Financial Times is promoting the G7. And it is also faking a concern about the billionaires evading tax. And it says that American complex tax rules favor billionaires. And I've got on the briefing a statement that UK so-called health secretary Matthew Hancock rejects Dominic Cummings' evidence against him. On page 2 in the detail, they say, Hancock rebuffs Cummings' criticism. And they say about the Napier barracks in Kent, the discord over migrant policy puts barracks in spotlight. Remember the High Court ruling by Mr. Justice Thomas Linden, who found that the Home Office was wrong to house the asylum seekers in that place which was unfit for human habitation. We shall come back to the Napier barracks soon. And the headline is kind of trendy, but it lacks substance. So you go back to the Napier barracks. The Napier barrack, or the Napier barracks in Kent, And the Financial Times on page 3 today, Friday, the 11th of June 2021. So this piece is timid because it doesn't really refer to the UK's racist policy, the UK's racist crime and the racist intention to break the international conventions and obligations and treaty duties. So typically it's a timid piece by the Financial Crimes. So it says, discord over migrant policy puts barracks in spotlight. That is the stupidest possible heading that they could write on the facts of the matter. Discord. What is discord? Discord on what? Discord by who? And it doesn't actually describe the real purpose being racist. Discord is a completely neutralized kind of image. Discord doesn't show either racism or lying or hatred by the UK government, Boris Johnson, or the local councils. So what they're saying in the piece is not even touching on the UK's illegality, international treaty violations. And there is no reference. There is no reference whatsoever to the Labour Party. And in fact, the financial crimes is painting the behavior of the Home Office as a morally elevated one, like fighting against the campaign for justice, fighting against the campaign for an end to racism. Fighting elevates the Home Office's racist role. It reads, the Home Office is fighting other challenges over its treatment of migrants. It doesn't say over its racist treatment of migrants, discriminatory treatment of migrants. And the Kent County Council, as I have said about the Kent County Council earlier, I haven't described it, but here is the description of the updated position or updated description of the current position. Kent County Council announced on Monday that it had taken the first step towards initiating legal action over the number of unaccompanied child asylum seekers it was being asked to support. The council said that 240 unaccompanied children had arrived as asylum seekers in Kent between January the 1st and June the 1st, but that only 52% had been transferred to other authorities, including the county facing what it says is an unsustainable burden. Kent County Council, that is. Now, Kent County Council is part of a kind of army that is engaged in war against the asylum seekers, against the people in the lowest income, and against mostly parents who are in low income. And the item in the Daily Mail today that Boris Johnson is attacking Priti Patel for not being even more hostile to the asylum seekers than the Home Office has been and is. Now, this is the statement that is being published in the paper on the day that the so-called G Summit is going to be paraded as another glorious achievement of Boris Johnson, who remains absolutely committed to opposing all the human rights, all the universal rights, all the basic rights against any state that discriminates against the asylum seekers, refuge seekers, and others who are seeking to escape from violations, from genocide and murders carried out in their regions or in the regions affected by this behavior where they have had their homes. Now, the Financial Crimes is saying that discord over migrant policy. It doesn't say that the UK's breach of international law is causing any friction in the so-called government fronted by the congenital liar Boris Johnson. And On the day that he is supposed to be announcing all kinds of so-called internationally compatible measures on behalf of the UK, as he formally chairs the various relevant sessions of the United Kingdom policy at the G7 summit, which the UK is hosting, because this is the year of the G7, that is the UK's year to preside over this organization. And there is no outcry against this. There is no outcry, there is no fact-checking, there is no actual criticism, let alone condemnation, of the Johnson contradictory, corrupt policies in any other part of Fleet Street, not even in The Guardian. And not in the Financial Crimes. So what we shall be doing is continuing with the evidential fact-checking diagnosis of what is supposed to be the G7 opening today in Cornwall.